In 2022, we celebrate 130 years of HBCU football. On December 27th, 1892, Livingstone and Biddle College, now known as Johnson C. Smith University, played in Salisbury, North Carolina, with Biddle winning 5-0. Over time, HBCU football has evolved. HBCU football's popularity continues to rise. Millions attend games each year and millions more watch on television. The HBCU bands provide some of the top entertainment in the country. Over that time, some of the best players to ever play in the National Football League played at HBCUs. Every Monday through Friday on the HBCU Football Daily Podcast, national radio and television host Donal Ware takes a look at what's happening in HBCU football and talks with coaches, players, administrators, and media about the 2022 season. Make sure you join the conversation on social media by using the hashtag HBCU130. Now, here's your host, Donal Ware.
This is the HBCU Football Daily Podcast for today, Monday, November 28th. I'm Donal Ware. I hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving weekend, enjoyed time with family, etc. And let's get to things as they pertain to week 13 in HBCU football. You had 3 games that were played on Turkey Day. In the Turkey Day Classic, Alabama State upset by Arkansas Pine Bluff 19-14. So Alabama State finishes its season 6-5. And if you're Alabama State, and meanwhile Arkansas Pine Bluff only 1 win in the SWAC. Again, Doc Gamble dismissed about 3 or 4 weeks ago or so. And if you're Alabama State, this is not the way you want to end your season, particularly at home in the Turkey Day Classic. 14,000 there in Montgomery, falling to a team that, fought. I mean, you got to give the Golden Lions some credit. Fought, able to score. Kayvon Britton's 14-yard touchdown run with 49 seconds remaining put Arkansas Pine Bluff ahead for good. And give Britton a lot of credit, 160 yards. He had 3 rushing touchdowns on the day. Was the workhorse, 28 carries on the day. And just not a good day for Alabama State, who Eddie Robinson in his first year, it was a solid season, but man, that's just not the way that you want to end the season if you're Eddie Robinson and Alabama State. We had 2 other football games. Again, we talked about why Florida A&M did not make it to the FCS playoffs, and there were some really good FCS games, playoff games, as a matter of fact, but obviously no participation from HBCUs. It was Benedict falling to Wingate 23-6 in the second round of the Division II playoffs. Remember, Benedict got the bye in the first round, number 1 seed, and it really wasn't even close. It was a dominating performance defensively by Wingate. Still, very good season, no question about it, for Benedict. A great season, but like most of our schools, especially when we get in the playoffs, you see the differences between our schools and some of the non-HBCUs a lot of times. And this was another case, unfortunately. I mean, you're talking about a clean sweep, really, of HBCUs in the playoffs this year, with Fayetteville State falling, Virginia Union falling, and now Benedict also falling. I think when you look at Fayetteville State, Fayetteville State had nothing to lose, right? Going into that one, wasn't even, I think, ranked 10th in the week previous to the final rankings of the Division II rankings. Was fortunate to get in the playoffs, I'll put it like that. Virginia Union, only 1 loss during the regular season, hosted a home game against this very Wingate team, and it really wasn't close. And now you look at Benedict, who is the number 1 seed. Okay, so Wingate goes on the road 2 straight weeks against HBCUs and wins. So, we got to figure out, we got to figure out a way. I mean, I'm not taking anything away from Wingate. I mean, it's a tough team in the SAC. That's a very, very tough conference. But particularly if you're a team like Benedict and you've had the season that you've had and you've beaten some tough opponents, a little bit surprising to see, especially in the manner 23-6. It's not a close football game, particularly that the game was at home. So no success in postseason for HBCUs this year when you're talking about in the playoffs. And it brings up another interesting point. Wow, what would Jackson State have looked like had Jackson State been able to participate in the FCS playoffs? Now, undefeated to this point, got one more football game. We'll talk about the championship game and the opponent, which will take place next week. But that Jackson State team, very, very good. I would have loved to have seen what Jackson State would have looked like in the FCS playoffs. But of course, when you're talking about the SWAC has the automatic bid to the Celebration Bowl. And now, of course, we saw where FAMU last year was able to get the at-large berth, but not the case this year. In the final game in New Orleans on Saturday, Southern defeating Grambling 34-17. Big second half for Southern, turned it up defensively on the young quarterback for Grambling. Grambling was hanging tough. Good close football game. Southern turned it up defensively in the second half. And so now you're going to have a rematch from a game we saw, maybe 3 weeks or a month ago or so between Jackson State and Southern. And that should be, Jackson State is so talented. That's the thing. Like, I think when you look at Southern, it's a solid football team. Jackson State is so good. They're good and talented. I think that's an uphill climb for Southern. But of course, we'll break it down a little bit more throughout the course of the week. As of course, we'll have the game of the week on the Friday's edition of the HBCU Football Daily Podcast. But again, I would have loved to have seen Jackson State in the playoffs. And I guess there's nothing you can really do about it. Obviously, the money, when you're talking about the Celebration Bowl, and it's just more high profile. You're talking about the game being on ABC, all of those things. FCS playoffs does not have that. It does not afford that opportunity. But what an opportunity it does afford is to be able to play nationally against all teams and fight perhaps for a national championship. We won't get to see that. We probably won't get to see it at all anytime soon, particularly with the Celebration Bowl where it is. But I'm going to be looking forward to seeing that SWAC championship game on next week. And we'll talk about that more throughout the course of the week here on the HBCU Football Daily Podcast. So no polls this week. No polls this week for coaches or media polls this week with the limited number of games that were played. So that's going to wrap it up for today's HBCU Football Daily Podcast. Of course, you can find us on our website at box2row.com. And for more information, you can check us out, box2row.com. You can also listen to the HBCU Football Daily Podcast at iHeartMedia.com or wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on the Box to Row YouTube page. Enjoy the rest of your day.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the HBCU Football Daily Podcast. You can also listen to the podcast at box2row.com, iHeartMedia, or wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to get your HBCU football fix on Box to Row with Donal Ware each weekend on the radio station near you, and on SiriusXM on HBCU, Channel 142, and on ESPNU Radio on SiriusXM, Channel 84. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Box to Row for the latest in HBCU football, and don't forget to tell a friend.